All right, so we have now completed our first graphing from standard form example, and I'm just going to do example 2 to make sure we've got it. I know there are usually a lot of questions when we're going through this. Hopefully you're thinking back to Algebra 1 when you guys have done this before. I think the table is definitely the trickiest part though. So again, we always start with our axis of symmetry. And in order to get this, we need to notice that A is going to be -1 for this one. B is -2, and C is 3. So if I'm setting up -b over 2a, -b would be +2 because b is -2 over 2 times a is -1. That's 2 over -2. So the axis of symmetry is x equals -1. And once I have that equation set up, I just plot my axis of symmetry because this allows me to have an easier time making my actual parabola. So again, remember your vertex is going to be somewhere on that line. And actually, I can already recognize that since I have a negative a value, it's going to open down. So I know that my vertex will be a maximum and nothing will go above that. So in order to find my vertex, I am going to plug that value in to the equation. So this would be -1 squared. So I'm plugging in this -1 minus 2 times -1 plus 3. So I'm plugging in -1 for my x values in my equation. So -1 squared is 1. So that would be, and then I have the negative out in front, so that'll be -1. -2 times -1 is going to give me +2, and then +3 on the end. So now I've got -1 plus 2 is 1, plus 3 is 4. So the vertex is going to be -1, 4. And again, that always goes in the middle of my table. So I've got -1, 4. So if I plot that, here we go. And now remember, since this is opening down because of the negative a value, I know nothing should get plotted up here. Everything should be below here. My domain, those are my x values. It's going to go left and right forever, so that'll be -infinity to infinity, also known as all real numbers. And my range, now I'm starting at 4 and everything should be below that. So I can either say from -infinity to 4, and I would have this closed bracket because the range is going to include 4, or I can say just y is less than or equal to 4. Those are two different ways to write your range. This is interval notation. And I believe this is, it's an inequality. I'm going to have to think about what the proper term is for that. All right, so I am now going to look at my y-intercept, and I know that my y-intercept is my c value. You should have gotten that from your introductory assignment. So my y-intercept is going to be 3, right there. So that'll be 0, 3. And then as I did before, I like to set up my x values like a number line. And I know that my y values or my f of x values are going to reflect about that middle value. So -1, 0, 1 if you're thinking of a number line, and then going down would be -2 and then -3. So right now I actually already know 0, 3 is a point, which means -2, 3 is a point as well because of your axis of symmetry. So this one's 1 away over here, and it's 1 away over here. So that's how I know that's a point. And now in my last example, I factored in order to find out what my x-intercepts were. And I can do that again on this one, but I also want to show you if you just have these x values filled in, you can find any value just by plugging it in. So if I look at this 1 and I plug it into the equation, I'm going to do negative 1 squared minus 2 times 1 plus 3. So any x value, you can find a point on here just by plugging in that value. The most important value to find is your vertex because everything stems off of that. But once you find your vertex, you can really just plug in the values around it. So this is 1 squared is 1, so that's negative 1 minus 2 plus 3. So left to right, negative 1 minus 2 is negative 3 plus 3, that's 0. Oh, I plotted it on the wrong side. I know it's also going to be there though because this is 2 away from my axis of symmetry and negative 3 is 2 away as well. So notice if you start here going out, as long as you're going the same distance away from the vertex, these y values will be the exact same thing. And here I can just draw in my parabola. Now just to verify that those are indeed my x-intercepts, I am going to factor this as well, just to show you the different ways to do this. So if I factor this, I've got negative x squared minus 2x plus 3. And if you know me, you know how much I hate that negative leading coefficient. So I am immediately going to divide everything by negative 1 and change this to 0 equals x squared plus 2x minus 3. And that's a lot prettier for me to factor. So I've got what multiplies to negative 3 and adds to 2. That would be x plus 3 and x minus 1. So this one tells me x equals negative 3, which I knew from the table. And this one tells me x equals 1, which also I knew from the table. So my x-intercepts are going to be negative 3, 0 and 1, 0. There you have it. You can get the x-intercepts just by plugging in and kind of guessing, or you can go through the x-intercepts by solving. This is definitely going to be more beneficial to you, but also being able to fill in this table is really helpful for the graphing section.